Hello everyone, this is Tamara, your courtroom companion, and today's video is going to be a little bit different than my typical style of video because as I told you in my introduction video that I would have guest speakers from time to time to bring you another facet of support. And in today's video, I'm going to have my first guest speaker, which is my mom. Welcome, say hello.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everybody.
This is Judy. This is my mom. And you're probably wondering why my mom is going to be my first guest speaker. And the reason for that is because she played a very critical role during my custody battle for 8 years. And we're going to chat all about that today. I think that what she's going to bring today to the interview is ways that you can share with your family and friends how they might show up for you in terms of their support of you during your custody battle. And so my mom did a lot of wonderful things on my behalf during my battle to support me. And so we're just going to get into the meat of that. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say. And I think you'll enjoy it as well. This is her first time on camera, so she's a little nervous, which is fine. I was a little nervous too when I started, but she might look down from time to time just to make sure that she, doesn't forget to say anything. She brought some notes with her today, and she just wants to make sure that she shares with you everything that she came here to share. And so we'll give her a lot of grace in that area, but I think she's going to do great. Once she gets into it, she'll be fine. So she has prepared some answers to questions that I gave her, but we still will do some ad-libbing along the way if we find it's appropriate and she gets comfortable. So we're going to get into it right now. So if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. All right, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Wonderful. Okay, so what I want you to tell the viewers is what was it like going through this battle as my mom with me side by side? Just tell us a little bit about your experience.
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is that it was very, very stressful and it was all consuming. We lived and breathed this case for 8 long years, and I was your only support person for most of that time. We never knew what to expect when we went to the mailbox, whether your ex would have filed something else in the court system. We never knew what the judge would say during a hearing, and it was just all very stressful. Your ex-husband was just constantly causing chaos in your life and in the court system. If he didn't like some co-parenting decision that you made, or if he didn't get what he thought that he should get, either from you or from the court, and he would just constantly be filing motion after motion in the county court system and also at the state level at the Court of Special Appeals. And we were just constantly preparing responses to his motions. We were constantly preparing for court hearings, meetings with your attorneys, and it just went on and on for 8 years that way.
So it was like all-consuming in that you couldn't really have a life outside of this, right? You had to go to the grocery store, you had to get gas, but basically that was our life for 8 years.
Yes, and I'm retired.
Yes.
And I just had to give up on my retirement life because you needed the help. And I wanted to support you.
And thank goodness you did. Thank you so, I don't know what I would have done without you.
But regardless of it being stressful and all-consuming, it was also very rewarding when you kept winning in the court hearings because of all of our hard work and your excellent attorney, of course, and especially when you won sole custody of your son in 2019.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure it would have been harder and more disappointing, obviously, to put in all this hard work and effort and support and not come out successful on the other. And that would have been really hard. But thankfully, we didn't have to experience that. So, I have always appreciated, what you've done for me, and I'll be forever grateful for that, like literally unwavering support. There wasn't anything that you wouldn't like get up and do, or like there were times when I had I still work full time, so I never stopped working, and so many times you were at home doing my work for my case while I was doing my other job, right? So I'm just always going to be grateful for you coming alongside of me like it was your custody battle. I knew that I wasn't in it alone, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, sometimes I felt like the plaintiff.
Yeah, I know.
I felt like this was my case.
I know.
And so that's how I proceeded.
And I felt it every second, so I appreciate that. And I know you've alluded to a few of the things that you used to do for me, but can you talk more in depth about the actual stuff that you would do to support me, the tangible things that you would do?
Okay, I've practically supported you on a daily basis in whatever came up that day, whatever you needed. I was there, and I handled whatever that was. I guess the first thing that I supported you on was financially. I didn't have a wealth of savings saved up for this type of thing, but I did take out a large personal loan and several credit cards. And because you had these outrageously high legal bills,
Right.
and I just felt I needed to help you with that.
And what's interesting about that is I also had to take out loans that I was personally doing and credit cards that I was personally doing, but I had sort of tapped out of what I could access, and we still needed more. Now, many of you, probably a lot of my viewers, don't have access like that, and I offer videos on here about where to find free resources and stuff like that, because I didn't always have an attorney. I had to represent myself sometimes, and so at some point we ran out of what we could do, personally, so I had to represent myself, and so I did that successfully as well, and I do hope you'll check out some of my other videos about how to do that. But in this area that she's talking about, she did take out loans and credit cards and made those payments because I was making the payments on the other. So that's one thing she definitely did, is help me financially.
In addition to taking out the loan and credit cards, I also came out of retirement and I became a ride-sharing driver. And I put whatever money I made on these high legal bills.
Actually, we were both rideshare drivers during this same period. So I would work full time, and then I would do the ride sharing at night, and sometimes we did the ride sharing together. So that also bonded us a little bit more. Yeah.
But anyway, all of this financial support that I tried to give you was really just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Because the legal bills just kept climbing.
Yes.
And climbing. and climbing some more.
I'm still paying them.
And that's what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That you won custody 3 years ago, sole custody of your son, but you're still paying on these legal bills.
Oh, it's ridiculous how costly a custody battle can be.
Yes. So it helped at that time. It would have been a lot worse if I hadn't have helped at that time.
Also, it's interesting because right now I'm proud to say that I took over all of the loans and the credit cards that were in your name. And so my mom no longer has to do that. So I'm really proud that I was able to release her from that, because I didn't want her to carry that while she's in retirement. And so I have them all now kind of under me. So it's hard. It's hard financially, but I'm glad that she doesn't have that under her anymore.
And I'm so thankful you did that, because that allowed me to refinance my mortgage. Yep. At a lower interest rate, and the way interest rates are now.
Yes.
Oh, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And also during the 8-year custody battle, you had to have countless meetings with your attorney to prepare for upcoming hearings. Yeah. And As far as I remember, I think I attended all but maybe 2 of those.
Yeah, you did. It was like for medical appointments or something that you couldn't get out of. So hundreds of meetings, you went to all of them.
Yeah, so I kept supporting you in whatever was going on at the time.
Yeah, and what's interesting about when you came to my meetings, it was good to have 2 eyes and 2 ears there, because my mom would like take notes for me while I'm talking to the attorney, because he would ask me to explain things and I would be explaining, he would be talking, my mom would be taking notes. So I was kind of free to just like have that communication with him and didn't feel like I had to keep writing things down because I knew you had it. So that was very beneficial to me.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was, and it paid off in the end.
Yeah, it did.
So also during the year, I think it was a year and a half that you were representing yourself.
Yeah.
I spent hours and sometimes days and weeks preparing our written responses to whatever motion your ex had filed at the time. That was after we drafted or brainstormed what we wanted to include in that. And I remember us hooking the computer up to the TV screen.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And we would just sit on the couch and look at this screen and put our different points into it.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. That's right. We had to go out and buy like a special cord to make sure, I think it was an HDMI cord, but it had to be not a normal one, like it had to be a really long one in order to kind of be able to reach to where we were sitting in the living room. Oh, I remember those days.
And that was just really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So we brainstormed what to include, and that was helpful, as I started writing the response.
And what was also helpful too is that my mom would like get my thoughts down, right? And she would like be typing. And then what would happen is when I would go home, my mom would like take a stab at like drafting like our responses. But my mom's a really good writer and a really good editor. So I knew that at the end, we have this ongoing joke in our family that, when people would come over, she would be sitting at the table sometimes writing, and they would say, "Tamara, did you even give your mother a break? I don't think she's moved from this table." And it's because she would get into these motions and just write, and she would keep editing it to make it sound just right. So I knew when that final response would be submitted, it would have had lots of love and time poured into it. So that's another thing you did, is I knew that you could edit the heck out of any document.
Yes, and I enjoy that type of work.
Yeah.
And once I get into a project, I just don't want to put it down.
Right.
So speaking of our final responses, and we really enjoyed, I think, assembling our final responses.
Yes.
It was a production.
In what way?
It was a production because sometimes we had 10 to 20 attachments to a particular document. Right.
And we would letter them A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3.
I think we even went up to Q one time.
We would have a cover page. It would say like Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and oh my gosh, those days.
And then we would first have to print all of this, and we needed to print 4 copies.
Yes.
We had to give the court 3 copies, and then we had to keep a copy for ourselves.
Yes.
So you have this long kitchen counter.
Yeah.
And we used to pile each attachment and so forth on the counter, sometimes the floor.
Right.
Because it's only so long.
Right.
And I have a lot of fond memories of us doing that, and we had to put together hundreds of final documents.
Hundreds. I have fond memories too. I remember us trying to find ways to laugh, and it was hard, right? It would be so beautiful outside, and we would know other people are out there enjoying, going to wineries or concerts, and here we are assembling one court document, one exhibit after another. And so we would find little ways to laugh about our condition of our life at that point. But I do have fond memories of that. We went through that together.
Yeah, and sometimes the printer didn't work and we had to reprint a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Or sometimes the attachments were really long and the pages got all messed up.
And we had to go out and get more ink sometimes. And then my printer stopped working and I had to buy a new printer at some point. Yeah, it was crazy.
But that wasn't the only part of this production.
Yeah.
Because then we had to get the document to the court.
Oh my gosh.
So here's what we used to do.
Oh gosh.
I used to drive.
Yes. Yes, you
because we had to get to the courthouse.
Yep.
And you would jump out of the car
Yes.
and have to rush into the courthouse to get a date stamped before the deadline.
Yes.
And during this time, I would circle the block because we didn't really want to have to pay to park just for that short thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you used to circle the block, and by the time you circled the block, I was in the court and I was out of the court. But yeah, it was like we would like breathe this huge sigh of relief that we got the date stamp on our copy, and we would drive home very proud of ourselves that we got it done, but we were just emotionally and physically exhausted.
yeah, because most of the time we only had minutes to spare before the deadline expired or before the doors to the courthouse closed.
Yes.
So that was really
that was a time. You know, I do have fond memories of that time as well, and I don't know what I would have done if you weren't there. I would have had to park, which means I would have had to stop maybe earlier in order to get there on time, which we needed every minute when we were preparing these responses. And so, yeah, it was because we're not attorneys, right? We're not paralegals. It may take an attorney, 3 hours to write a motion. It would take us 12 hours to write it because we had to like formulate what we were doing. And so, yeah, fond memories for sure.
And I have another fond memory.
Oh, do tell.
Of your ex-husband had filed 4 appeals to the State Court of Appeals.
Yep.
And that office or that court was about 75 miles.
That's true. That's true.
We live on the west end of the state, and
Yep.
the court was on the east part of the state.
Yep.
And they closed at 4:30 in the afternoon. And here again, we were running late with getting this This appeal is another big process.
Oh, well, I want to make one clarification. So the court we would normally file our stuff is in the county, right? Which is only 20 minutes away. So we could handle that. But like she said, the state court was 75 miles away.
Yeah, and it just so happens that it was during rush hour.
Right. Yeah, which brings another whole component to the story.
And the rush hour in our particular area is just horrendous.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, here we are. I'm driving again. And because you had to rush it in again.
Yeah, right, and I was like checking time, checking traffic, trying to find another way to go. Like, it was crazy.
And, we were saying, we have 12 minutes left or something. And
yet we have 15 minutes more to drive. So it was crazy.
So we kind of broke some speed limits.
Yes, we did.
Tried to get there. Mm-hmm. And here again, the court closed at 4:30.
Yep.
We got there at 4:20.
Yes.
And you jumped out of the car.
I didn't know where I was going to, because this wasn't our normal way of doing it. I didn't know which block she was going to circle. She didn't know where she was. So yeah, you would have to go find a place to kind of go until I came in and out.
Well, luckily this particular court, closes at 4:30, and it was an area where I guess people had already gone home and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I was able to just wait in front of the court there. But you rushed it in again and got a date stamped.
Yeah.
And we
were thankful for that. Boy.
We said, phew.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I remember that time. And I remember being in traffic, being so stressed, because if we wouldn't have made it, the Court of Special Appeals would not have had our response. If you're late, it's whatever the other party says, that's the only side of the story that they'll have. So it was really critical.
Yes. So they have strict deadlines
Yes.
about this process.
Yes.
And it would have been a wasted trip, all that gas and so forth getting there.
Well, why don't you tell them what it's like to put that document together and what a waste that would have been?
Okay. That's another thing that I did to support you.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, that your ex had filed 4 appeals. And during the 8 years, I prepared 2 of those responses. That's another big production because you're considered an appellee.
Yes.
And we had to prepare an appellee brief.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that I had to research how to do that.
And she's not an attorney.
I'm not an attorney, no legal background whatsoever.
No.
So, I found out it had to be in a certain format.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be a certain size font.
Yep.
You couldn't go over a certain amount of words. It had to be spiral bound.
Yes.
And in addition to the appellate brief, we also had to have another spiral bound document that contained all of your attachments. Yeah. I forget what that was called.
Record extract, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Record extract, yeah.
And so this took weeks to prepare because your ex had 5 things he was filing on.
It's almost like are they questions? I think he has 5 questions.
5 questions.
For the appeal courts to consider. And I'm just making something up here. When you go to an appeals court, you are basically saying that something wrong happened in the lower court. Either some law was broken or something was done. Like, for example, he could have a question in there, which he did, that he wasn't given due process. So that's the question he's asking the appeals court to rule on. And so he put all the reasons why he was not given due process. So then we had to look up she did. She looked up all the laws on what it means to have due process. And then she had to go to our court transcript to figure out, was that an issue that he's correct on? Was he not given due process?
And I had to research online case law, legal case law. Mm-hmm. And as Tamara said, I'm not an attorney. So I'm sure everybody has probably seen case law. Right. I mean, it's really legal terminologies and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I was able to find some case law that I felt may address that particular issue, and that's what we used. Uh-huh. I don't know if I was right or wrong.
Right, that was the thing. It was a guess. Like, we didn't know if we were properly applying that law.
Yeah, it seemed okay to me. It seemed like it would fit. Yeah. So, anyway, that's kind of that process, but that took weeks to really do all this research and put it together. And
I'll tell you, I do have many fond memories, but one stands out in particular around the appeals process. So as I said earlier, like, I work full time, right? And I'm fighting this horrible battle. Plus I'm ride sharing whenever I can. And I was really, really exhausted, and I felt like I needed a break. And an opportunity came about for me to go camping. And I remember you saying that I should go, right? And this was during the time you were writing your appeal.
Yeah,
do you remember
that?
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so guilty about going because she was at home writing my appeal and researching. But I felt like I needed I couldn't keep going the way I was going. And I think you saw that. And on one hand, I knew I had your blessing to go. But on another hand, I was like there feeling guilty because I was enjoying the break, the mental break. But yeah, that's another way you supported me, is that you could see where I was emotionally. Yeah. And you would do things. Sometimes she would make me casseroles so I didn't have to worry about dinner. Or she would let me go on this camping trip. Or she would help me in ways with my son that I, was just too exhausted to do. So that was another thing you did, is you could see that because you were side by side with me, you could see what I needed emotionally.
And here again, I was at my computer and I was on a roll.
And you didn't want to stop.
And I didn't want to stop. And I didn't know what part to give to you at that point.
Yeah.
So I just felt I should continue on with that.
Yeah.
And it paid off because you won both of those appeals.
Both of them, yeah.
Without having an attorney.
That would have cost me another $30,000,
Yes.
I think, to do both of those.
Yes, it would have.
Right. And when, hold on, there's the other part of this. She said we had to have spiral bound stuff, which means we had to stop writing. We had to stop writing. We had to start assembling days ahead of time to give our copy place here in our county time to assemble all of those spiral bound things, because, you know, that was the rule. You had to have them spiral bound, and they had to have a certain color cover page, like the outside of it had to be green, I think, in one time, and yellow another time or something.
Yeah, there were different colors you had to adhere to.
Yeah, so many rules when you're filing an appeal. So
And here again, there were umpteen copies we had to print or have printed.
So what else can you think of that in ways that you supported me? Is there anything else?
Yes, a big thing that I did to support you was to develop a case file system for you.
Yes, at home. And you actually kept it at your house.
Yes, it was at my house. I was able to control it. I was able to keep it up to date, that sort of thing. And it was around the time you were representing yourself in the county court was developing this online court document system. Previously, we had to
drive to the court.
Drive to the court, request them to get a certain document. They would have to copy it, give it to us. We'd have to drive home.
Right.
Well, now we had everything online. We were able to access your entire case throughout the 8 years.
Yeah.
I think we were very, very fortunate that we were at that time when this was developed.
Yeah, because it was hard because you had to wait in line to get the copy. Like you said, they had to go and get the big file, and it was always like huge. My file was huge by this point. It was from 2013 to 2014 when we were trying to do this. Yeah. And so, yeah, she kept all the files at her house in a very meticulous filing system.
And we had to pay for those copies, too, that we got at the court.
Yes.
So anyway, I kept track of all that, and I guess I won't say too much more about that system because I understand that you may want to do an entire video.
Yes, because that system that you created back then has evolved, right? And during the COVID, when everybody was quarantined, she spent the entire, I think, 8 or 10 weeks. Again, I don't think she came out of her house except when she had to, and she spent literally 8 to 10 weeks creating a very extensive filing system, because by then, you'll see when I do this video how extensive the court document filing system had to be.
I considered it a library.
Yeah, it is a library.
It was a library of your case.
Yes.
And everything that you needed for whatever reason was there.
Yes, yes. So you played a very integral role, and I think the reason why I wanted to interview her is so that you can kind of see the types of support that you may need and want to request from your loved ones, right? Because we didn't know what role she was going to play until the need arose. And so, if you have a lot of court documents and you're working full time and you're a mom and you're really busy, maybe there's someone in your life that's very organized and can help you with this, because that filing system was critical for us preparing for attorney meetings and going to court and things like that. So it was one of the big pieces one of the biggest parts that you did play.
Yeah, so I was essentially the person behind the scenes.
Yes.
Doing whatever needed to be done at that time.
And I affectionately called her my case manager. She was my case manager. So, okay, so let's move on. So if our viewers would probably want to know, what advice would you give their loved ones going through this with them? Like, what kind of advice can you offer them?
I guess I would say that that person needs your love and complete support during that period. If you're not able to do it as much as I did because I'm retired, you should at least try to help them as much as possible. I mean, it's hard enough dealing with a narcissist, but when you have to deal with them in a court setting, it's even worse. It's
worse. And like she said, sometimes, she was retired and was willing to do it and had the time to do it. But if your loved ones are still working and they aren't able to give the length and depth of support that she did, sometimes you just need someone to say, how are you doing? You can do this. What can I do? Can I make you a dinner? Just anything that you can have time for. You can request that of your family and friends.
Yes, and even if I wasn't retired, I would have done the same thing. Maybe not as extensively if I had a full-time job, but I would still be very much involved.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And helping you in whatever needed to be done.
Yeah. And I don't know what I would have done without you.
Well, thank you. You made it all worthwhile.
So, is there any other things that you can kind of think of in the realm of how loved ones can support, their family members going through something like this? Anything else?
I don't think I have anything else about that, but it was just about, I didn't want to think your rest of your family.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to say that I was your only support during most of that time. And the reason for that was because most of our family members live out of state.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I was it.
That was it, right.
I was it.
Yeah, we have a small family and everybody's in a different state, different location. So yeah, if you weren't here, I wouldn't have had anyone.
Yeah, so I just couldn't sit by and let your ex-husband try to take your child away from you for no reason at all. Totally undeserved.
Right.
And basically, a person really can't handle this type of complicated, extensive court case by themselves without having some family support or friend support.
Yeah, and I think for my viewers that are out there, if you're fighting with a narcissist or someone that has narcissistic tendencies, the reason the case is so complicated is because they have all of these whacked out ways of handling relationships. They lie, they project, they do all kinds of crazy things, which makes the case so complicated, which is why there's so many court documents. And so you need someone in your life to help you go through that. And so you were that person for me.
Okay.
What did you learn about yourself during this process? Hopefully, I know you gave a lot of yourself. So what did you learn about yourself during this?
Well, I've always had faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
And I leaned on Him during this period because so many things that occurred during this 8 years was out of our control.
Yeah.
And we had to depend on God to kind of get us through.
Mm-hmm.
So going through this case, it really strengthened my faith in God.
That's great.
And I felt that He would ensure that we had a very just outcome because you were doing everything right, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You were honest with the facts, but your ex was not.
Mm-hmm.
He was totally uncooperative, everything that went on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just felt that God would give us a just verdict, which He did.
Yes, He did. And I'm glad that, that you got stronger in your faith and your faith walk as we went through this. That makes me happy that you got something out of it. Not that you wanted something out of it, you were giving of yourself, but to hear that makes me really happy. All right, so maybe this is going to be hard for you to answer because it's probably not just one thing, but if there is one thing, what was the hardest part of going through this court battle with me?
The hardest part was not knowing how the judge would rule on a motion at a court hearing.
Yes.
The hardest part was just sitting there wondering when she's going to rule and how that ruling would affect you.
Right.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah, so many things in court, you can't control a lot of the stuff that happens in court. And so, while we hoped the just outcome would happen, you just never knew until it happened. And so, yeah, that was hard for me, is the not knowing. We would go in, and I think another probably hard part that you probably would agree is that oftentimes when we would have full day hearings, there were so many breaks. And we would, and I had to pay my attorney to be there for the full time, yet maybe an hour of it we were sitting outside because maybe the judge had to do an emergency motion, or the judge was taking, longer in chambers because she was dealing with other people. And so I think the waiting on top of not knowing what the outcome would be, is that I felt like a lot of time we were sitting in the lobby waiting to go in and continue our hearing.
Yes, that was the hardest part. There were a lot of hard parts, but that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Just not knowing the outcome.
Yeah.
And the judge came through.
Yes.
She was able to see through all the nonsense.
Yes. Yes, thankfully.
And gave you sole custody of your son.
Yep. So what do you kind of wish, going through this, that I knew about you during this battle? So if they have loved ones showing up for them, what do you want us to know when you're going through this, supporting someone? What do you wish I knew?
Well, I think you probably knew a lot of my feelings because we went through the same things and had the same feelings. But I don't think you knew how concerned I was about your health and mental state.
Yeah.
Because you had the added strain of fighting for your custody of your son, in addition to a full-time job and co-parenting with a narcissist. And I was just really concerned about your health and well-being.
Yeah, because honestly, self-care takes a back seat when you're going through something like this. And you're right about being concerned about my mental health and physical health, because part of going through court with someone who's a narcissist or has narcissistic tendencies, there's constant smear campaigns, there's constant character assassinations. And not only was I dealing with the stress of the court battle, the stress of what all that brings, working full-time and part-time, and some during a period having those two jobs, on top of that I had the attacks coming from the person who is a narcissist, or who I believe is a narcissist, even though, disclaimer, he's never been formally diagnosed, but all of his behaviors point to that. It was hard to be on the receiving end of that. And so you probably watched how all of that big ball of stuff was impacting me, right? And there was no end to it. That's part of the problem. It's there was no end to it.
There was no relief. It was just constant.
Yeah.
And yes, I watched, the stress on you.
Yeah.
And I made a conscious effort to kind of lessen that pressure as much as I could by taking on more responsibilities.
Right, yeah. So, okay, if you could do something different than you did all of those 8 years, what would it be?
Okay, the first thing that came to mind, well, let me give a little background.
Okay.
Your ex had filed one of his appeals. I think it was around 2014.
Yeah.
Sort of at the beginning of your case. And he filed an appeal to the State Court of Special Appeals, and we got it in the mail, and we both just we were dumbfounded.
Yeah.
We thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What do we do?
Right, because this wasn't the county, right? This was, we thought we could, maybe we had the skills to deal with the county, but the state, we just thought that was just way out of our league.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we were a novice in the court system. We didn't know how to do a motion or a response or any of that. So anyway, I took it upon myself to look online for an attorney that had something in his bio about appeals.
Yes.
So I made the selection, and we regretted that decision to this day. And this particular attorney, we hired him to handle this appeal, and obviously your whole court case at that point.
Yeah.
But he made an excellent response to the appeal. It was a written response to this State Court of Appeals. Yeah. And you ultimately won that.
Yeah, so that was the good part.
Yes, that was the good part. But then this particular individual, he was extremely incompetent in most other areas that you needed. He couldn't represent you on the floor of a court setting. You lost a major custody issue at that point. I forget what it was, but anyway,
Yeah, so this particular individual, like she said, we hired him to do the appeal, but then he sold us on him representing me for the rest of the case. And we regretted it ever since, because I did lose some ground, although we got a new attorney later on who gained that ground back for us. But at the time, it was like a year and a half where we had to live with what he did. But interesting, we've recently learned that this particular attorney was incompetent with a lot of people, and he was disbarred. He was disbarred recently, so thankfully he's not going to hurt anyone else's case. But he practiced for a while after that, but he did. We knew what it was like to have a bad attorney, so when we got a good one, we knew we had to keep him. So we did get a good one, who's still my attorney of record.
And actually, I'm the one that selected him.
Yes.
So I selected a bad one, and then I selected an excellent one.
And it's funny because I have all kinds of videos out there, but one of the ones that I did was because of this issue. I created a video on how to select a good attorney. So that's key. If you're going to have an attorney and you can afford to pay for an attorney, you don't want to have just any attorney. We experienced what it was like to have a bad one and what it was like to have a really excellent one. And so I created a video to make sure that, you can do that. So, well, I just so appreciate you taking the time today to be here. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
I just wanted to say how proud I am of you for developing.
This is my mama.
Developing this channel.
Oh.
And it has grown extensively since you developed it not too long ago, actually.
Yeah.
And you've gained such an abundance of knowledge during this whole 8-year battle. And you're now able to share that with other people to help them go through such a battle. And I just want to thank you for inviting me today.
Yes.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, good. And I'm, on that note, that is why I developed this channel, because she and I went through so much during this battle that I had to do my part to help others lessen the blow in some ways. And, I get feedback from my viewers all the time about how helpful this specific video is, everybody's dealing with something different. And so we're bringing all that 8 years of what we learned to this channel. If you have other ideas, other content you'd like to see from us, we got a host up in these brains that we just want to dump out and help others. And so we would love to hear your feedback on this interview. We'd love to hear other ideas, other guest speakers you'd like us to have. I'm thinking about having my financial person on here. She offered to come. Maybe my attorney will come from time to time. But yeah, do let us hear your comments. I've enjoyed recapping, our fond memories together, and I hope the viewers enjoy it. And maybe we'll have you on again. Will you come back again?
I sure will.
All right. Well, do hit that subscribe button and do say hello to my mom in the comments. I'm sure she'd love to get feedback on how she did here today. I think she did great. So thanks for coming.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right. See you next time. Bye. Say bye, Mom. Bye.